Welcome to Driving Alpha, where we feature our friends, the outperforming investors who demonstrate their path to driving alpha or outsized investment returns. We're Alpha Partners, where we partner with 1,000 early-stage venture firms as their opportunity capital to invest in their best companies. Driving Alpha is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity knows. Learn more at affinity.co/driving alpha.
Hey, hi, it's Brian Smiga of Alpha Partners. This is the Driving Alpha podcast, and I'm lucky here today to be with my good friend Stewart Alsop of TK MediaTech Partners.
Hey, Brian, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to see you. All right, we're going to cover your whole career, but I think we want to start with how I met you and then get right to today, what you're doing today.
Sounds good to me.
I met you when you were a journalist. I sat in your office, and I think I was auditioning to get into Demo or Agenda. I forget which. And I had a product then called Dynadex. And you were so kind and generous and honest and blunt that you really made a great impression on me, as you do everyone. And I don't think you've changed a bit. I mean, we're going back, I won't say how long.
I've been a VC for almost 30 years and a journalist for 20 years before that, so 50 years in business. It's a trademark of mine that I'm really blunt. And I used to think that, I was kind of soft and polite, but I had three markers in my life. I'm terrible at school, had to switch schools at least once. I'm a terrible employee. I've been fired 3 times. And I'm also apparently a scary board member because I've been thrown off more private boards than probably anyone else. It's really hard to do that, when you're a VC and you own shares in a company. But I've apparently motivated several founders to get rid of me.
Well, I think a case can be made that being straight up probably in the long run is an advantage for a VC.
Yeah. Well, my fundamental tenet is, why bother starting companies unless you do everything you can to be successful? And so I tend to say what's on my mind based on the experience I've had about how to get from here to there. But some founders, it turns out, don't have as strong a self-awareness and constitution as I do.
Yeah, well, I think all the best of them have experienced some trauma or some problem because no one would do what they do unless they did. They're like actors. They have to do it.
They have to do it.
Hopefully more successful. So we're here to talk about today and then look how the underpinnings of your career led you to your investment thesis today to drive alpha or outperformance. And your outperformance thesis today is to be a one-of-one venture firm in media tech. And there's some reasons for that. And there's some things going on that we want to hear about, how media is going to be transformed more rapidly than people think. So go for it.
So the full name of the firm is TK MediaTech Ventures. We started out just calling it TK Ventures, and people didn't have any idea what that meant, which I can explain. And then we said TK Media, and they went, so you're going to invest in like movies and what? Video games? And we said, no, actually, we're investing in the technology that leads to change in the media and entertainment industries. And that's because my partner in our current firm, Alsop Louis Partners, i.e. Governor Louis, said to me and one of our other partners, you guys really, you come out of the media business, you kind of know what you're talking about. And if you look back at your track records, you've done a really good job. And that was the starting point. Leave it to my partner to figure out that the companies that have outperformed during my venture career are all technology for media companies, starting all the way back with TiVo in 2007 at NEA and all the way through Twitch at Alsop Louis in our first fund, and more recently Niantic and the Owl Wolf. So here's the thing, right? You're interested in alpha. I did look up, by the way, at what the difference is between alpha and beta, so that to understand what driving alpha means, which is, performance against benchmarks. So intellectually, we're curious, is this just me, like I picked really good media tech companies, or is it true for any company that does technology for media? So I put a spreadsheet together, and I'm sure we can find more, but we found like 35 companies that from the beginning of the personal computer industry through today, well, not quite today because there's still companies are cooking right now, but that from founding to exit to liquidity averaged 7.1 years. Well, at Alsop Louis, we've invested in a lot of poor technologies, frontier technologies, whatever the hell you want to call them. Those take a long time to get to liquidity. And so Gilman said to me at one point, well, 15 years is the new venture time to liquidity, which is true if you're investing in batteries and semiconductors and, national defense. And I'm getting a little older. I'm like in a hurry to make money. So we've combined this whole experience that we've had, me and Jim Ward, my partner, and TK, the experience I've had with investing in media technologies, with the idea that we can build a fund that returns quick liquid results within the time frame of a venture capital fund.
Well, time to liquidity is on everybody's mind. So I think you're onto something. We'll have to hear Gilman's reputation of that since he's investing in deep tech and strategic tech. Maybe we'll get him on the show. Hope to. But so time to liquidity in media tech, that's very interesting. So that's one pillar of a foundation. Then you've got your track record, which we don't know if it was just you picking or there was an interpretation of those picks that we should apply today. You want to talk about that next?
So part of this is Jim Ward's thinking. We're the two general partners in this fund and partnership. So he started thinking about it, and he and I have both been involved in the computer business and the media business since the early 80s, technically since 79 for me. And he's a great brain. He just processes stuff and comes up with these points of view. So he said, well, what we're really working on is the third convergence of technologies between media and technology. And the first convergence, which was forecasted by Nicholas Negroponte in 1979, when he was running the MIT Media Lab, was that the desktop computer, the personal computer, would converge with broadcast and publishing technologies to change the media industry. And that happened. And this is, a lot of people don't remember, this was before the internet. Right? So even when we were working with desktop computers, we weren't connected to anything else. I participated in desktop publishing because I published a newsletter starting in 1985. And I wrote the newsletter and then formatted it and laid it out on a Macintosh 512K, originally with just floppy disks using an early release version of Aldous PageMaker. So that was where it really started. Nonlinear editing of video, and a company called Avid Technologies really transformed how the movie business produced films. And another guy came along who used to work at Apple, a fellow named Hugh Dubberly, who predicted the second convergence, drafting off of Negroponte's first convergence. And he said in 2010, he said, well, technology now has a high-speed internet to back it up. And that will lead to all the things that we've seen over the last 15 years, including social media and cloud storage and, real-time synchronization across the internet. So that happened. Actually, still is happening. Right? I'm actually writing a little newsletter on the slow death of social networks because I think this is part of the change that's going to happen. So now there's a third convergence, and third convergence is, just a little bit what we're doing right now. Can you tell the difference between something to digital? Can you tell that I'm actually a real person when you're looking at a computer screen?
Have they got a bot to imitate you yet?
Well, I don't know. It's beginning to happen. And this is one of the things we're actually looking for in this third fund, which is who's going to enable the use of avatars that are realistic, that look like you, but that are digital and become your digital twin in real time, so that you can't tell the difference between one and the other. And it's not just in terms of avatars. There's a whole set of technologies that we've targeted as part of this fund because we're old farts have been around, experienced both of the first two convergences. We actually know exactly where to look, and the people who are doing this know exactly who to come to. So even though we're still raising our fund, we have an incredible pipeline of deals, which we can't invest in quite yet, but we are doing our first investment probably this week.
Let's go back to TiVo for 1 minute. You're at NAA. You're the first journalist probably to become a full general partner at one of the firms.
Mike Burris and I were contemporaries. He joined Sequoia at approximately the same time I joined NAA.
All right. So what was it about the first convergence that you saw in TiVo? I think I know the answer that made you said, this is going to make money. This is going to be a one of one.
Yeah, the founders of TiVo had been at Silicon Graphics and had been working on, trying to remember exactly what it was called because it kind of didn't work, but they were working with cable networks to produce kind of the digital future. And they left silicon graphics when it didn't work. There was a specific thing, and I think it was the Time Warner they were working on. And it really didn't work because you had to have, essentially, to have a silicon graphics workstation in your house to get the media. But it predicted, you could tell. And so joining NEA, the very first thing that happened was that my partner, Mark Perry, had been the chief operating officer at Silicon Graphics and joined the firm 2 years earlier, talked to the founders who had left Silicon Graphics and went over. Of course, NEA also funded Silicon Graphics as a company. So they went over to visit Dick Gramlich and Mark Perry, and who were going like, you want to do what? Produce a box that you can watch television on with a hard disk in it? And what's that? So they turned to me, like I'm a media guy, right? I was a journalist before. I'm interested in this stuff and clearly had been looking at other stuff. And so I went, oh yeah, this is it. Subsequent to that, my brother, who also invested in NEA and started an NEA portfolio company, and he and I would argue for years about, the internet's going to be fast enough. You don't really need the box. And I said, yeah, could be, but it'll take like 15, 20 years for that to happen. And during that period of time, there's an opportunity. And so that was the opportunity I saw when Mike Ramsey and Jim Barton came and pitched NEA. So I ended up being the board member on that deal because of my media background. And that was the predictive part. I was looking at music deals. I was looking, one of my favorite stories is when I was looking for an online bank and was recommended to talk to Elon Musk on his second company, might be a surrogate, called X.com. And there's a whole story about that. And that's not technically speaking really media, but I was looking at, if you've got this wire plugged into the back of your computer, what can you do? And a lot of that was related to all of the different forms of media. I knew newspapers were going to die. By that time, I didn't have a job at a newspaper, so it was okay for me.
So did you have a shot on goal with either eBay or the online classified or X.com?
No, all that's happened before I became a VC. I became a VC in 96. So eBay was 94, I think, and classified. I mean, if you're talking about classified.com, that was like 83. That was done actually before there was a web. That was when you could dial in.
All right. So now today, we're at the onset of the third convergence. Are you among the prophets of the third convergence?
Yeah, it's what we're predicting. Yeah. And it's like, it's a pattern, right? All venture capitalists do is recognize patterns and try to figure out how to get there first before everybody else does. So after 30 years of being a VC, and for Jim, after 30 years of being in the media business and advertising and working in Lucasfilm for 10 years, you're looking at each other and going like, we know what's going to happen. Like, we know. Well, you can't really tell that to a prospective LP. Yeah, just trust us. We know what we're talking about, right? But there is evidence, right? Because we have a track record, both of us in different ways. We pitch our firm as an investor and an operator, and we both have predicted the future of technology. So him as an operator in the media business and me as an investor in the media business. So it's, some people look at that and go, yeah, that's a valid pitch.
Right. So it's the accurate representation of reality in digital twins and digital technology. So good, so high fidelity, you can't tell the difference. And this is going to open up tons of opportunities, right?
Yeah. A lot of people say, oh, well, that's because you're going to, invest in AR glasses. No, not for different reasons. That's only just a piece of it. And it's really important to understand that because everybody starts to go, oh, you can put a pair of glasses on and see characters running around in the real world, and which is Niantic. It's one of our portfolio companies, Alsop Louis. That's a piece of it, right? If you can take it with you, yeah, that's a really interesting thing. And the other extreme of that is the video games, right? You can put a Oculus headset on. They still call it that at Meta. Anyway, but yeah, I think they still call it Oculus, but you can put a VR headset on and then be completely immersed in a video game. And it is the first application of VR headsets, and really kind of the only application of VR headsets.
Yeah, I think you even argue that Andrew, the founder of Oculus's fantastic new company, is a digital representation of reality that had never been accomplished before for the battlescape, right?
In real time and totally accurate, right? You can't equip soldiers on the front line Yeah, with stuff that, one of the issues is it persistent? There's a name for it. I'm trying to remember. I just watched an interview with Palmer Luckey, and, in a denied environment, that's the term. In a denied environment, the tech has to work, right? If you can't do signals, if Elon Musk decides to turn your signal off, you got to still be able to be present and understand what's going on in real time accurately. And so that's the most extreme, but that will bleed back into the consumer business. So,
Right. So that's a business, industrial, gov tech application of this reality twinning or representation and digitally. Is TK going to invest in both B2B applications of this as well as consumer facing?
yeah, I mean, I have ideas. Some of my ideas I think are pretty good. One of them is you have to start with the target market, right? You have to develop consumer technologies for consumers. You have to develop B2B technologies for the enterprise. And, there are a lot of people go out and kind of go, oh, well, we're going to do this and it'll be a great consumer thing. Like Vision Pro is most recently. You can't then suddenly start selling that to businesses, right? But once it's successful in one or the other, they can bleed over, but you have to know where you're starting with the technology, the price points, the user experience, and so on and so forth. So enterprise technologies are a big deal with AI right now. And well, AI is like everything these days. It's one of the interesting things. Like, yeah, we believe in AI, but we're a little fun. We're not going to be going out with the big guys and trying to invest hundreds. We won't have hundreds of millions. We're only targeting a few tens. But every company we invest in has to know how AI is affecting what they're trying to do, and has to be competent users of AI and the AI tools. And, we think that the big guys have kind of gone crazy. There's a big geopolitical warfare over who's going to control AI, which right now Meta has fallen behind and is going out and paying people a lot of money, and OpenAI is like charging ahead and still raising a lot of money, and Anthropic and Perplexity, et cetera, et cetera. It's all going on, and we're like cool with that, but we understand how to apply that to our domain.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think it's the applications of general AI that are going to win. It's a big investment thesis at my fund Alpha, and radiology, auto piloting planes and drones, etc. And it's always this vertical application. And so the vertical applications of AI in MediaTek, give some example, please.
Well, I mean, obviously, and this is what most people are focused on, you can use generative AI to develop images, video, and music at a much lower cost. And, how does that affect the copyright business or the ability to copyright works of art? And then there's, far more. We're looking at a company, which we probably won't invest in because we won't have enough money and time to do it, called Kubrick, which, instead has been this progression in how do you film movies with background, right? B-roll, which would be the way they talked about it in the past. There's been this whole progression over the last 40 years about how you improve the ability to film backgrounds. I live in New Mexico, and so the entire state is a background for a lot of movies, which is why there's a lot of movie business here. But this company has a base of LLMs that have been trained to produce backgrounds, and they can produce absolutely perfect digital representations of a background. So when you're watching the movie, you have no idea that that was just produced in a computer, as opposed to using big LCD screens or, even B-roll in the old days. So, there's a category of tools. VFX is kind of what it's referred to in general in the movie business. But, this can be applied across all different forms of media, and in fact is already being used for video games.
So investors should get in touch with you to have you lead them into Qubit.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So on that note, and the founders you're going to find, let's turn to those two things. The fund itself, classic venture fund, headquartered LA and New Mexico, right?
No headquarter. Why do we need a headquarter? This is venture capital. It's the most virtual business you could do. You talk to people on the phone, you get on airplanes and go visit them, you send them money digitally. It's like...
As an LP, how are you going to operate? We know what you're going to invest in. You're going to invest in this new wave of reality twinning or reality representation digitally. It's obvious to you, and I think to us once we think about it. But you're in the pole position, I would say.
Yeah, I think so, and it does. It's because of our experience. But
how do you operate? How do you source? How do you win? How do you get value? And how do you get out in 7 years?
So first of all, you had to pick the right deals to get out in 7 years. And, I actually had never been in a media tech company longer than 10 years. And Twitch was an 8-year run. We invested in 2006 and got out in 2014 when it was sold to Amazon. This is the kind of thing that happens that once technology takes hold and people go, oh, yeah, that's it. Then other people want to buy it, or, if you're lucky enough, you get to go public like TiVo and Glue Mobile did earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole premise is based on that track record, my track record, but also the track record of all media and technology companies. So then the problem is, how do you find the deals, right? Well, I've been doing it for 30 years, right? So everybody knows that I'm do this. They all know my companies, I'm throwing Sonos and
Right. People are going to find, right.
yeah, they know who I am. They know who Jim is in the media business. So we get it from both sides. If you're inside the media industry, you know who Jim Ward is from his career in.
So you're early, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is my most recent learning from Alsop Lewis. Like, we go, hey, look, we're going to go out and be an early investor in frontier technologies. So we have like a battery company. We have a semiconductor guy. Actually, that one got sold because it was too expensive to do ourselves. And so we're in these core technology areas, and it takes forever to make money. And, there's a liquidity problem in the industry in general, because a lot of those companies, not only just because of generically staying private longer, but because it takes a long time to establish a business and set up a fundamental business where you're operating at a profit and look like an attractive public offer. So, I'm getting kind of old, and I don't want to spend 15 years trying to make money in a company. So, people come to us. We probably have 30 companies in our pipeline already. We've done a small first close, and we're making our first investment. I can tell you about that investment because it is emblematic. Plus, we're looking for a company that we would like an entrepreneur to start. And we've been talking to people about that. And, we're hoping that we raise enough of the fund to be able to do that company next. So, we're kind of like, we got it mapped out. We don't really have to know something we don't know in order to figure out which 15 companies we're going to own, maybe 20. The thing that I've learned is invest at the inflection point. So we've had plenty of experience at Alsop Louis where we find a crazy founder may have been already working on it for 10 or 15 years. And then we think, okay, this is the inflection point, and then it takes another 10 years to get there. We have a company doing waveguides. The company is actually more than 20 years old, and we've been an investor for 8 years. And, we're going like, okay, how long is it going to take to get out of this company and make some money? So it's both sides of my brain, right? I see the pattern from my past, and I know what's going to happen in the future. And so we're out there, and we can find companies if there's not one that's coming to us.
Well, there's a lot to like here, especially the shorter duration, which is bound by both your track record and 35 firms. So that's really interesting. Your ability to invest at the inflection is interesting. Your ability to see all the deals is interesting. Forcing the founders to have a target market.
We don't force founders to do anything, because if you have good founders, they're not going to do what you tell them to anyway. But just had to cut you on that one, because it's like we call them pigs. We're just looking for a few good pigs.
Yeah. So let's dwell on the pig story real quick. So this is Alsop's take on how to evaluate a founder.
Let me say this is Jim Ward's take, because he's the one that surfaced it in our quarterly meetings at Alsop Louis. And he says, so, because we're an offsite, we're talking about how to find the right entrepreneurs, because that's always the hardest thing. Even somebody you think is going to be a great entrepreneur and maybe doesn't work out. So he goes, well, it's like buying a breakfast. You're sitting there looking at your plate, and you've got the bacon and eggs. Well, the chicken was involved in making your breakfast, but the pig died for it. And so what we want to find are pigs who are willing to die for what they want, who hold a vision of true north and can talk in tongues. And what we mean by that is the entrepreneur has to actually know what he's doing. That's holding true north. You're trying to accomplish something, and they have the domain experience and the work experience to know that that's what's going to happen. And then they have to that's hold true north, and they have to talk in tongues, which means they have to not speak the language of the business they're in. So if you find pigs who hold true north and speak in tongues, that's a really promising indicator you've got an entrepreneur that will scale.
Okay, so if you're a founder in media tech that looks like that, you're seeing founders now, right?
Huh?
B2B.
Yeah, we're talking to, as I say, we've got like, well, there's like 25, 30 companies we've talked to because we've been working on this for a while.
And they'll find you at Substack. Where can they find you?
salsop@gmail.com, salsop.substack.com. If you can't find me, you're not worthy of being an entrepreneur.
There you go. We're counting. Now, the LPs, they're not going to look as hard, right? And so I think that here's how I see it as an LP in a very small LP in a few funds and a general part of my fund is I really want to diversify into sectors I don't understand personally well enough to invest in them, but somebody does. And I think this is what we have here. And I also think that LPs need to know about this space. If they don't invest in TK1, they need to know about this space because they're going to put dollars into this sometime soon. So thank you so much for the education about this digital twinning wave. I know you call it the reality disturbance wave.
Yeah, we're trying to lose that because it's disturbing.
I think the bet is that everything that's represented in media can be replicated with a high degree of fidelity and accuracy. And that's going to...
So, I mean, you talk about driving alpha. In my mind, how can you take $1 billion as a venture capitalist and drive true alpha, right? You have to return at least $3 billion and, better 5 to 10 billions. And I know numbers have inflated over my lifetime, but I still have trouble thinking that way. And that requires a completely different structure. So I am a believer in traditional venture capital, which is you start with a small amount of money and you make a lot of money on that small amount of money. And that's the fundamental truth about alpha.
Right. So you're on the way as someone who started with a $10 million fund and now has a $153 million fund. It's music to my ears. And this is Stewart Alsop at TK MediaTech Partners, right? Did we get it right?
TK MediaTech Ventures. But really, we just want everybody to know about us and call us TK, which means, by the way, is an editing mark that means to come. So we're investing in what's to come in the media technology business.
It's when you have to add it more. Yeah, it's what's coming next. All right, so here's what's coming next from Driving Alpha. And this is Brian Smiga. Thank you, Stewart, for joining us. Great sitting with you.
Thank you, Brian. As always, total pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Driving Alpha podcast, where we host top investors to demonstrate how they outperform the market. Click subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Driving Alpha is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity knows. Learn more at affinity.co/driving alpha.